So I want to start posting reviews of the games I've played when I feel I finished them. So to start this, I'm going to go over my thoughts for FNAF Security Breach and its DLC Ruin. Yes, even though I finished this a few weeks ago, I still want to post a review with my thoughts. So there will be spoilers, but if you do want to see a playthrough, I did one on the channel here, both the main game and the DLC. Also, a subscription and a like would be nice, but let's get into this. To start, let's discuss the main game of Security Breach. In it, we play Gregory, who's trapped in the Pizzaplex. It's a type of branded mall with all types of an arcade and all different fun activities to do. So we're there overnight. We're trying to escape, but we have to hide from the robot mascots and the security guard. So one thing I don't want to go into, and I don't think I really need to, is all the problems at launch with all the bugs in it. Plenty of people have covered it. Setting wise, I really did enjoy the Pizzaplex. I think the devs did a great job of making a place you want to like explore, and it feels like a place you'd want to go to in real life. The map has a lot of nice small hidden areas to discover, but the problem with that is there really isn't much to find there. Yes, there are collectibles, but they feel like they were added more because they're part of a checklist, not because there's a real purpose or fulfillment behind finding them. I mean, you could see that in the collectibles descriptions, there's not even really like any notes or anything. It's just pictures. So an idea I always like that I feel make collectibles more enticing is to kind of attach a reward for collecting all of them. This can be, you know, anything really, but I always like the idea of a small video or like an article or something that gives you a little more of the story, but you have to collect all the parts to understand it. So a good example of this is in the game Until Dawn. In that game, the collectibles are these totems, and when you collect them, it tells you the backstory of the area you're in. So I did like the art style of this game, and so I'm not really much of an art expert or design expert or anything, but I do like the animatronic designs. I think they work well. I like, again, I said I like the way the Pizzaplex looks and all the aesthetics behind it. I do feel it's a bit jarring though, how fast they go from like brand new to cracked and dirty. You know, like how you see it in Freddy. I did like the shattered models too, the ones after you quote unquote decommission them. It the amount of damage that you do to them feels proportionate to how damaged they looked. I will highlight too one of my favorites was Shattered Roxy. I did have a nitpick though. That's with Shattered Monty. I feel because you remove his claws, but then he just has other claws. I feel it would be more how to say it. It would look more organic if you remove his claws and then he either has like stubs or like loose wires hanging from his arms, the way Withered Chica used to look. Or they could have even had him improvise some hands out of some junk or something he found. But that's not the worst thing ever. So then there's the gameplay. As a horror game, I feel Security Breach falls short. But here's the thing, I don't feel like it was made to be a horror game. Security Breach to me felt more like it was a stealth game with some scary sections. But then the question is, how did it do as a stealth game? Unfortunately, it's not that great as a stealth game either. I felt the security bots are just annoying, and I feel like they're filler just randomly thrown around the Pizzaplex. Like, some areas have very few or no security bots, and others have such strange paths, it's almost impossible to time it to get past them. Luckily, for the most part, you can just jump in Freddy, and you just walk past everything. Additionally, too, once you get the Faz Cam or the Phaser Blaster, you kind of forget about stealth, and you just freely run around. And then, anytime a security bot sees you or one of the animatronics is coming at you, you either jump in Freddy to walk past them, or you use the camera or the blaster and just incapacitate them. It felt more. I felt like in the beginning there was more of a challenge, and then it just becomes explore the map towards the end. But I do want to highlight two of the scary sections, that being the daycare and the endoskeleton basement. The first time I played those, I was legitimately like scared. They had great atmosphere. It got real dark. You couldn't really tell where the guys were coming at you from. I thought that was done very well. Finally, there's the story, or what little there feels like there is. Now, I do understand there is environmental storytelling in the notes, but the problem is there's not much of a story told in that either. So, to explain the point I'm trying to make, I kind of want to give an example of what I think is a little bit better of a story in the series. So, that would be in FNAF 6 or Simulator. I, I think the good FNAF story has three elements. So it should explain some previous mysteries or give you some background or explain what happened in a previous game that was left open ended. Two, it should explain what is currently happening and why it's happening. And three, it should leave some mysteries for everyone to think about and work out between each other, with the community. So let's see how Simulator addresses these points, at least in my opinion. Well, for point one, we get the origin of the puppet from the security puppet game, and then we also get a sense of how Afton at least lured one of his victims. Additionally, in the insanity ending of that game, you kind of get some of Henry's relationship to Afton. So for point two in that game, the true ending, Henry just tells you exactly what's going on and why it's happening, and how everything was all set up, and he gives one of the best lines, and I think in the entire series. And finally, for point three, we get the Midnight Motorist minigame and the gravestones with the hidden names on them. So, people can work that out. So now, would I say Pizzeria Simulator's perfect at that? No. But at least they had some of those. So now let's look back at Security Breach. So for point one, the notes do give us some insight as to where the staff is and how Vanny got hired. Jumping ahead to point three, we do have the different endings. They didn't really tell us what happened with Glamrock Bonnie, so there are some mysteries. But I skipped point two because there wasn't really much. We don't really know anything about Gregory. Yes, that kind of falls under one, but we don't really learn much about him. We don't know why he wants to upgrade Freddy. We don't really know what Vanny wants to do. Why, how much control she has over what's going on, over herself, over the animatronics. We don't even know her motivation. We never even really get a full explanation of the fate of Glitch Trap. Like, yes, in one ending we get re-release Vanny, but like, is he still out there, or was he only in her? Now, I wasn't expecting everything to be perfectly explained. That's just not what the series does. But it really felt like we didn't get anything. And one thing I do want to stop in advance is the idea that the books explain a lot of this. I bought a game to play. If I just want to read a story, I'll buy a book. I feel the books shouldn't work to explain the game. They should supplement some minor details or explain stuff in the games that won't be touched on again. And I do feel it's a shame since they had a big opportunity to tell an interesting story and begin like the new main arc of the series, but instead they just kind of didn't really do much and are letting the books explain what's happening. So since I felt the game was lacking, I wanted to give some ideas that I thought could have improved the game. Now, I know my suggestions aren't for everyone, but this is what I think would have been enjoyable in the game. So first, you do need enemies to stealth around. So what would I suggest for that? I don't think the staff bots should be gone completely. They should still be around, mopping the floors and cleaning tables, similar to like how we see them in the laundry room or in I think it's El Chip. They're clean, in some of the kitchens you see them mopping. The Glamrock should still be patrolling around and be the biggest threat, as in they can see from the furthest away, they run fastest, they actively search. So what I thought could be interesting is use recreations of the animatronics from the previous series. Since they already established that they made the VR game to kind of poke fun at it, and you can kind of see posters and pictures of previous animatronics, have them throughout the Pizzaplex. So an example on how to make this work would be right in the beginning. You get out of Freddy's room and you're running to go get the I forgot it, whatever the pass you need to open his door is. And on that little stage recreation there, you see the original three, the Bonnie, the Chica, and Freddy. So you go under the door, you grab the pass, and they're gone when you come back through the door. So then when you go and release Freddy, he tells you to jump in quickly, just similar to like in the daycare. And then when the screen loads with his eyes, you see one of the original three just standing there staring with, like if it's Freddy, his eyes are black, however you want to do it. And then you start seeing them all start patrolling Rockstar Row. This kind of teaches you the mechanic that, okay, all the other animatronics will be walking around and they are threatening themselves. But I think what would be interesting too, and a nice little callback is well, the old animatronics should have different faults. So an example would be like Foxy. If you click the flashlight at him, he gets stunned, just like in the previous FNAF games. For the main story and the gameplay, I feel like there should have been some sort of timer, like 11 to 6 p.m. Make each hour like 15 minutes or so, however they want to do it. Then you have the daycare attendant who, does his patrols at the top of the hour. That way you gotta kind of time what you're doing to make sure you're close to a recharge station. I would also then give you 5 nights. You gotta solve the mystery of what's going on. Within that first night, there needs to be some sort of tease, whether you hear Vanny or something. And I think that should be the mystery: is what's Vanny's goal, why is she doing it, how to save or stop her, however they want to do it. And then at the end of the night, you get a couple minutes. You have to find a few hiding spots because the staff are coming, and if you're not hiding, you get kicked out. One final thing I do think they should have added is multiple ways to either damage or disable the glam rocks, and add different degrees of difficulty and setup that you need for each way, as well as the level of disability that each animatronic has after you perform their corresponding act. Like maybe you can use the garbage crusher for any one, any of the three, Monty, Roxy, or Chica, but you have to figure out a way to lure them in. So Now, would this have been a better game? I don't know, maybe. Am I saying it would have been easy for them to add all of this? Certainly not. But again, I think it would have improved it. On a final note, I do want to say adding all this stuff I know would delay the game again and further. Now, my whole thing is I always say, listen, you got to delay the game. Especially with the FNAF fan base, I don't think they would have been that upset if you tell them, hey, we need a little bit more time to make this better. Or another thing, if you're doing it, you have 5 days, each day releases a different quote unquote chapter or do early access. I know people don't like that, but I've seen it early access work fantastically. So now let's talk about the Ruin DLC. So this takes place after the events of the main game. We play as Cassie, who has to go into the now destroyed Pizzaplex to rescue Gregory. He tells us he's trapped under the building. To start, I think it's important to emphasize that they lean more on the horror direction than the stealth one from the main game. I mean, there's long stretches where, unless you put on the mask, you're essentially alone with no threats. But they did take good care to make sure that it did feel like there always was a threat and that the atmosphere was always unsettling. Again, the map once again I think is great. It does a great job of feeling like an abandoned building that you get trapped in, and it makes sense how you're trapped. I'm going to say my nitpick for this part is it's kind of hard to understand what the company's doing with the building. So to explain this, let me let me say it this way. So in some sections you see construction equipment and waste containers, which kind of points to the idea the company's cleaning up or repairing the building. Then in other areas there's just rotting food and trash everywhere, which makes it seem like it's abandoned. And then there's other areas that look clean and undamaged. So now that's not necessarily a problem if you have these different areas, but there's no real progression between them. So you have like cleaning equipment on the catwalks that are basically falling apart as you're walking across them. Then you have other areas where you're climbing over mountains of trash to get to hallways that look as clean as could be. I think if they would have just kind of, had the area in the beginning be a little bit cleaner and more construction stuff, and then as you get deeper, it feels more nasty and broken. I think that would have made it a little bit more cohesive. But again, that's not the biggest deal. Gameplays wise, I think it was a massive step up. It was smart to enclose the map into a more linear progression style, because then this allowed for more planned out sections and objectives, and more planned out like scenarios and scares. I enjoyed the mask mechanic because it did give you a good amount of control of the threat, and it made this really good risk reward system where you want to push the limit, but then you hear Max's spawn, and you know you got to take it off as quick as possible. And again, that risk reward and that you're in control kind of harkens back to more of the classic mechanics where you're in control of the security room and it's how much you want to risk. And it was good they introduced it early because then the progression through the game as you learn different things made it better. And then when you get the mask stuck on later, you understand the risk and it makes it more tense. I also do like how they changed the gameplay from section to section. I I felt it build up in difficulty. The problem was the end did just feel like a chase sequence rather than trying to use all the stuff you learned to escape. One thing I do want to note, I don't know if it was just me, but I had a hard time in the bowling alley. I don't know why. I couldn't figure out why some of the music men would just randomly turn on. And I looked it up and I could not figure out what was triggering them to start walking around. Another aspect I do want to commend is the game over screens. They finally moved away from just the animatronic yelling in your face and they got a little more creative with them. I definitely feel that change in the main should have been made in the main game because it's actually kind of creepy. Like again, the music men. When you get a game over, you have two of them like holding your arms back as one jumps at your face. Or with Monty, you're trying to kind of hold yourself away as he's biting you. I I truly hope that in the future games they continue this and don't go just back to them yelling in your face. So now for the story. Overall, I do think it does a better job than the main game, but I still kind of feel it's lacking a bit. So let's look at our 3 points again. They're going to be out of order. So point two, what's happening in the game and why? So it's explained a little later in the game why Cassie's willing to go to such lengths to save Gregory. It's shown that he was there to comfort her when no one showed up for her birthday. Listen, them being kids, happy I'm happy to accept that as the premise. They explain, that the security nodes were actually holding the mimic, and by turning them off, we released him, and we were being tricked the whole time. That was good. Point three: the mysteries for uh, for the future. Well, we don't know the canon ending again, which was smart. They left it so they can kind of decide what they want to use based on where they want to take the franchise. Additionally, Cassie's dad was called out numerous times, so I get the sense he'll be important, even if we don't really know his role now. And we know Gregory's out there actively working against the Mimic. But then there's point one again, explaining some backstory or past mystery or event. To give them credit, they did answer which ending was canon from the main game, that being the Princess Quest one. But the Mimic comes out of nowhere. Again, yes, the books explain his history, but that doesn't change the fact that there's no hints or loose clue about him in the game. I mean, all they really needed to do, they could have just put an email somewhere or, I don't know, a letter just saying it was some rogue employee's mistake or something they found from the past business that they're trying to hide. Again, they should have something rather than just having this be some unknown monster in the basement. And then I think too, they should have explained what was going on with the mask. You have a device that's allowing your player to phase through solid objects and teleport, but they don't even hint at how it works. Now, I'd be more forgiving with that if it was like if this was a fantasy game. You could hand wave and say it's magic. But since they're kind of going for more of a tech based horror, I kind of feel like this was a pretty glaring omission that I don't really hear a lot of people talking about. But since Ruin, in my opinion, really didn't need that many changes, I'm not going to go into whole suggestions like I did for the main game. But I do want to wrap up with my thoughts on the series and where that seems to be going. So to me, it seems like they're leaning into more of a AI gone rogue or crazy or trained improperly type of story, and moving away from the haunted animatronics type of story. And I do think this could actually work and be pretty interesting. again, it depends on what they choose to do with the story. It would be a shift from the horrors of the past to a more horrors of the possible future type of theme. But I do think it's smart to close the book on the uncanny robots haunted by spirits type of story that the original games are known for. I feel this way because the older audience that remembers places like Chuck E. Cheese and those scary ass animatronics, listen, I'll be the first to say I was afraid of them. But most of those players have kind of moved on, and you're getting a more younger audience in in this franchise, and the AI is more relevant to them than some weird pictures of mascots that they'll never see. So to close, I felt that Security Breach was a fairly average game. No, I don't think it was the worst thing ever, but I don't think it really stood out much to me. I think it's skippable, and it's just fine to watch a let's play, unless you're a hardcore fan that must play all the games. I'd probably rate it about like a 4.5 out of 10. The Ruin DLC was a big step in the right direction. It felt more like a horror game that the franchise is really known for. It's it is an enjoyable experience. I would recommend it to someone who is looking for a nice kind of entry horror game that's not too terrifying, but does make you feel uneasy. I'd probably rate it about a 6.5 out of 10 if I had to give it a number. So I do think it's kind of a shame though that we're moving away from the Pizzaplex. I feel like there was a lot more story that could have been told here, but again, to all indications, it looks like they're moving on. I I'd even be open if they wanted to make another DLC, another $5-10 DLC. I'd be willing to pay for that. But let me know what you guys think. Put it down in the comments there. I would ask to keep everything kind of civil and respectful. I I'm aware of how contentious some of the FNAF community could be, but I think everyone could be nice here. But that'll be the end of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach for me for now. Um, I'm not sure if I'll be back for any more of them. We'll see what goes on, but I will see everyone later. And yeah, I'm supposed to say like if you liked, sub if you want, and now I will see everyone later.